sector of it. I was right up my alley. Some of the organizations that they already partnered with, I was already partnered with individually. I like to call myself a resource guru. I don't know if I'm allowed to call myself that, but building my toolbox and working with the Hopkins community, because honestly, they just engage with the community on a larger scale than Morgan can. So I'm where I go where I feel like I'd be most effective. And then, so that is how I transitioned into Johns Hopkins University, which was also a big change, going from undergraduate students to graduate students, and going from a state school to a private and very competitive institution.
Awesome. And Lance, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Blanche Wright. I'm a daughter of immigrants. My dad is from Belize and my mom is from El Salvador. I identify as a bilingual Latina. I'm a first-generation college student, and I just got my PhD just a few months ago. So this is, I'm in a transition phase right now, and I'm really excited, obviously, as a psychologist, to talk about mental health. I've gone through a lot of transitions. I got my undergraduate actually from UCLA, and I was a pre-med major, and I completed all of that coursework. And then I was a research assistant in San Diego, which is about 2 hours south of Los Angeles. I was the first in my family to leave my parents' home, which was a big transition. I went back to UCLA, to my surprise, to do my PhD. And as part of my PhD, I have to do a 1-year-long clinical internship and it's a match process, similar to medical students. And I matched at Harvard, which was my top choice. And I was really excited to go there to not only work full-time as a clinical therapist, but to also do some research there and to take some courses in the School of Public Health. So since graduating, I've moved back to Los Angeles, which is where I'm from, and I'm back at UCLA doing a postdoc there, and also affiliated with RAND, which is an organization dedicated to research and advancing policy related to that. But I think a transition that I kind of realized as folks were introducing themselves is that, I come from a psychology world, but I'm really trying to transition into a public health psychology and kind of merging that with psychology. So that's also been pretty tough, but it's a lot of growth, and definitely could share a lot about that today.
Awesome, fantastic. So on that note, I think it would be great to hear more about you guys' personal experience and how you navigated some of these big transitions that you spoke of. And I think, as relevant to probably the majority of our audience, we would like to really know how you plan for and prepared for big transitions during grad school, as well as some of the transitions between grad school and your current role. And I guess, Allison, would you like to lead us off again?
Sure. So, I'd love to say that I just dealt with it so gracefully, and that it was just really effortless. There was a lot of crying and probably a lot of yelling and a lot of computer throwing. I graduated with my bachelor's in 2008, not a great time to graduate, but luckily I had the sense to stay on and do my master's straight through. So I put it off a little. But when I searched for jobs in December of 2009, it was impossible. There were so many hiring freezes. Education's not a great paying sector anyway. So I made the decision. I was trained as a therapist, but I was really fearful of not having benefits and vacation days and the stability. And that's actually how I got into higher ed. And so I think what helped me in that transition is just really minimizing your expectations of what that next step is going to be, because everyone's favorite question to ask those recent grads or those coming grads, Dr. Wright, I'm sure you had a million people. So what's next? And you're like, I don't know. You tell me. Is your crystal ball all shined up and ready? But I think giving yourself grace in that moment, and, just have that answer ready, to say, oh, there's, a few different things I'm thinking of, but we'll see what happens. And I think just being open to a lot of different things, right? When I job searched, I looked all over the East Coast from Boston down to DC, and kind of just went where it took me. And I think looking for the gems in those opportunities, even if like when you thought you were graduating, you were going to be in this type of role and that's not what ends up happening. I think looking at like where you can pull, it helped that I had a supportive family and like I could, crash at my parents' house for a few months while I figured that out. Not everyone has that space, but, to lean on those people in your life and to know, who to go to for what. Sometimes when we're in a tough spot like that, we go to the wrong people for a certain type of advice, and then we're surprised when they're like horrible at it. And I think you need to know who to go to for what. If you need that pep talk, you go to this person. If you need problem solving, you go to this person. And I think, knowing that about yourself and about your network can be really helpful. I've also had friends who were just like, I'm not going to talk about it. Like I have a good friend who's a PhD, a professor, and she's like, I will tell you where I accept when I accept it. She just did not want to talk about it. And I respected that, that was what she needed. So I think also if that's more your style, if you're not, someone who processes externally, you can put that boundary up too. And just kind of say, hey, like, I'll let you know when I have news, but before that, I prefer not to talk about it.
All right. And what about you, Saquon?
Okay. All right. So full disclosure to everybody on this call, I have really bad adult ADHD. So when there's multiple questions, and I'm just going to advocate for everybody else who has it. So when there's multiple questions or a question with multiple questions inside of it, I need to chunk it. So I'm going to do pre, during, and post just so I can touch upon everything. Right. So, okay, so how did I plan and prepare for the big transitions during grad school, like before it and during grad school? My answer to you, and I'm going to be brutally honest, I did not. I did not prepare at all for grad school. I did not plan to attend grad school. I did not know how I was going to afford grad school, and I was completely disenfranchised with school by the end of my undergraduate time, just because I don't need to talk to everybody about how much work they have like going in their school. So I was like, I'm the first one to ever graduate college in my family. That's good enough. Like I didn't have any jobs planned, nothing. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Like so many people have one goal that they're not thinking about like what happens once they accomplish that goal. So that was one thing that was happening for me. I was just like so busy actualizing graduating that I couldn't think about anything past it. So the pros of that was there was no stress because I wasn't even thinking about it. Cons was that I was completely unprepared. So what happened was I was the work that I did and like kind of the professional networks that I made. Like my professor and chair asked me to stay at Morgan, like come to the graduate school. I said no because I can't afford it. And then they said, okay, well here's a graduate assistantship. It's free now. And I couldn't say no, right? So I applied the day of the deadline. So that was my preparation before. But what I can say is, I guess the unintentional preparation that I did was establishing networks, building community, making sure that people knew that I was invested in the program, and making sure that like my name was getting brought up in the right places. So just I would say make sure that remember you're always being interviewed. So that's a good way to prepare. During, it was a lot of just the professional networking and like building a community within my cohort, like building a huge support system. Like it's always good to know like you're not the only one going through it. And just really preparing in that nature. Another thing that I did to prepare for after grad school was I really examined what my niche was and like what the demands were or what the demand was going to be coming out of graduate school. And then I focused on that. So for me, I have a kind of unique experience because I focus on mental health and specifically in schools. And I'm also a Black male. I identify as a Black male. So like there's not a lot of us in education, higher education, or in K through 12 school anyway, or mental health. So I was able to kind of utilize that as just like a natural demand and network. And then also just making sure that I left everyone that I was working with, like I made sure to have good relationships, and I'm big on people might not school. It's called Working to Empower. Don't look it up. I have no idea what it's doing now. But grad school was back in 2013 through 2015. With that, I was really able to kind of just like create a cohort of people that all had the same goals in mind, and that were all supporting each other through it. So like I had people who would police me, like, hey, did you take your licensure yet? Hey, have you, like, so really finding people that can hold you accountable. And then I would say my planning during my graduate school really helped. And then also like my program that I did at my graduate program, they really like helped. Like I interned in Baltimore City and Baltimore County before I graduated. So like I was looking for jobs then, and then just not being afraid to be like, hey, hire me when I was still an intern. And then also not being afraid to be like, what do I need to do to have your job? Because you're not going to be here forever. So like, I was just big on advocating for myself and then letting my work speak for itself. I hope I answered those 3 questions.
No, yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you. And Blanche, could you tell us about how you plan to prepare for big transitions, excuse me, both during grad school and between grad school and your current role?
Yeah, I think maybe instead of giving like a comprehensive story of how it went, just kind of highlighting key things. Like, I think I grew up kind of in a low income, situation. And so logistics is always at the top of my mind when I'm doing a transition. And really it's about where am I going to live and how am I going to pay for it? Because I'm not going to get help to do that from family. So when I first moved to San Diego for my job, I had to do a lot of convincing to my family that, hey, like I'm going there, they're going to pay me on a monthly basis or whatever it was, and it took some time, even 2 hours away, for them to accept that. I think it's partly culturally because in Latinx families, it's pretty typical for adult children to stay in the home. And obviously there's fear and going away, but that logistical part has always been at the top of my mind. And you have a job, you find a place you could afford, and that's it, right? But moving to San Diego, I felt very alone. I lived there for 3 years. I feel like I didn't really make any strong friendships, which is a really long time to come out of there, without strong friendships. And that's when it made me realize, like, you need to prepare mentally, the logistic part you're going to do because that's who you are, but what can you do to prepare yourself psychologically? Obviously, I'm a little bit of an advantage based on what I plan to study. I'm learning interventions to teach to clients, and I'm like, well, you better apply them for yourself. I did not expect to go back to UCLA for my PhD. So that was a pleasant surprise. That's a privilege to be around your support system. But also the match process, I'm glad I got my first match, but I could have gotten my third and it would have been a very different situation. But I knew it was going to be at least 1 year. And I really had to mentally prepare myself. If you don't make friends, what are you going to do? Right? How are you going to keep pushing during this really difficult year where you're working full time, you're doing research, you're trying to finish your dissertation and whatnot, so I think that really helped me to kind of recite that to myself, is that it wasn't my choice necessarily to come here and move across the nation to Boston, but I'm doing it to get these X, Y, and Z things on my CV to make me really competitive for a professor position, which is ultimately my goal. I think, again, I don't want to I could tell you a lot more, but one thing I did want to share is that, family obligation is a really big value in my culture and in my family. Your sister might need something, your mom, whether it's financial, whether it's you have psychology training. So what do you think about this issue that I'm going through? And, I've really had to make really tough decisions throughout my career of, unfortunately, the family obligation is going to fall by the wayside because I actually need to pass my defense and I actually need to focus for these two months. And so I think I've gotten better at kind of alerting my family to those periods. But unfortunately, that is a sacrifice I personally need to make because I'm not someone who who can like kind of multitask with personal things and professional things when I feel the stakes are really high. And ultimately I am doing this for my family. So yeah, I'll stop there.
And mind if I just add one thing to the family stressors, because that's huge. One thing that I do want to point out to everyone is like my family, because I mentioned I was adopted, but I'm still connected with my birth family. I was adopted like later on, but being first gen, like they're not, most of the time your family's not going to understand the academic obligations that you have, especially if you have obligations to your family. This is just my personal experience. I kind of had to make sacrifices and be the bad guy in order to get to where I am now. And the same people that were, oh, you never come home, you don't help out, they were the same people like cheering at my graduation and wanting to take pictures with me and telling me how proud they were. So like, just keep that in mind as well for everyone.
Thank you. That's all very impactful and personal information that we really appreciate you guys all sharing. So also on that note, so could you guys tell us a bit more about what resources you did take advantage of during these transitions, particularly those pertaining to mental health? And of course, you know, this panel is also about de-stressing. So could you also tell us about in what ways you de-stressed during these times? And Allison, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So every therapist should go to therapy. So I'm sure most people in this room are familiar with what happens there or the benefits of it. You know, I think recognizing when life is just a little hard sometimes, but you can push through it versus, okay, I need some outside perspective. And so for me, you know, therapy may be something that I engage in on an ongoing basis, but if I'm going to undergo a big life transition, then therapy is definitely be part of the plan. And, you know, going to therapy and saying, you know, this is coming up, I'm really nervous about it, and I just need a space for just me to process those things. So I would definitely encourage everyone. I talk to my students, you know, the counseling center, you've already paid for it. So you might as well take advantage of it. And it's never going to be cheaper than it is now or easier to find a therapist than it is now. So I encourage all of my students, even if they feel like everything's going great for them, to sort of bring those things to therapy, process those things, go in with those goals. But I think beyond that, you know, going back to what I was saying earlier, like knowing who to go to for what, I think, you know, there are friends that you go to do fun things and you don't talk about anything deep. You just have fun. Those are important friends to have. And it's also important to have those people in your life who you can lean on for mentorship or for more like technical or career knowledge. So I think lining those people up and not being afraid to drop them an email and say, hey, I have this coming up. I'm really nervous about it. Can we make some time? And just letting people know what's going on in your life. I think, you know, I've had many times in my or my family's life where you kind of expect the people in your life to know that you have something going on, like they get some like spidey sense or something. And that's not how that works. You have to tell people what's going on with you. So I think even just shooting a text to a few people and saying like, you know, and we haven't talked in a while, this is what I've had going on, like, and, you know, this is what I need from you. Right? That hopefully you have people in your life who want to be there and support you. So I think it's a little bit managing up and out. I think that can be a huge stressor because I think most people around you, if you have a good support network, they want to be there for you. They just don't know how. And sometimes it can feel really selfish to say like, I need you to do this. But I think a lot of times being on the other side of it, it's like a relief. You're like, good, I have a job. I know exactly what to do. So I think, you know, not being afraid to engage people in those specific ways. And then I think, you know, boundaries, you know, we were all talking about that, I think, in different ways. Having boundaries with people about how much you will indulge in certain things with them or things you have to step back from. So like recently for me, I'm getting married and planning a wedding, and that's really exciting, but that means that that's a part-time job and I need to step back from a lot of other responsibilities to be able to do that. And so not being afraid to say, you know, given this transition I have coming, even though it's a good transition, it's going to mean that I have to cut back in other areas and not having guilt about that. And I think if you've cultivated a good network professionally and personally around you, people will understand that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I can personally attest to the fact that the mental health resources here at Hopkins are quite fantastic. Saquon, could you speak to us on this a bit?
Yeah. So what resources did I take advantage of during these transitions? I was in a unique space, similar to Allison, because I was in like the mental health and human behavior field. Like our professors we were learning strategies for coping strategies, like to teach our clients, teaching them coping strategies, like we were learning how to provide therapy. And like their biggest thing was like, you cannot provide like comprehensive therapy if you can't handle your own stuff. Like there's a generous intervention model that all social workers kind of use to like an action model. And like they added in ours, they added a self-care part. Like the first part was like, are you okay to deal with your client's problems? So that was a unique situation that I had. But at the same time, the same professors that like do that, they also swamp you with work and like don't believe you when you're like, I have other obligations. Like, no, it's not just school. Like, so it was kind of the conflicting. But what resources did I use? I used my support groups. Much like Allison said, I knew what groups to use for what. Like, who are the people that I just need to go blow off some steam with if they're not going to start talking to me about work or school. Who are the people that are going to make sure that I'm focused? Like, and just knowing when to use your resources. I would say the biggest resource that I used was, and I'm gonna nerd out. I'm sorry. The biggest thing that I used was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because it just covers everything, right? Your physiological needs, security, belongingness, everything. So before I addressed anything, I was like, am I eating and sleeping? Like, and then, or do I have a group that I belong to? Like, do I feel safe when I go home? Like, do I have job security? And I think that always looking back at those things helped me de-stress, because like it puts a lot of things in perspective for you. Like I can't expect to be productive if I'm not sleeping or eating. And so it allowed me to kind of forgive myself for like my shortcomings, and then also focus more on how I can improve rather than just like where I'm messing up. And then another resource that I use, and I would strongly encourage for everyone, if you can get school-based employment, working at the same school that you're also attending just is really beneficial for like everything, academics and de-stressing. My positives were like support groups, social events. I got a lot of advice and guidance from people that graduated before me. So like really tracking those people down and maintaining those relationships throughout graduate school. And then the last big thing that for me was like understanding that there's a timeline. Like school ends, like you have a graduation date. And even if you're not like 100% sure when that date is going to be, you have a general idea. So like keep in mind, it's not forever. And that really helped me as well. Like this is a period of time where I'm experiencing this, and everybody in my classroom is experiencing it too, and it will not last forever. And there's people that come before me that I feel like let's leave it at that. Yeah. But yeah, and then my negative ones is like I threw myself deeper into my work or engaged in like not so good behaviors. Some might call them risky behavior during graduate school, and those are just the negative ones. So I would say put coping mechanisms and de-stressing mechanisms in place, because you will automatically feel it, whether it's positive or not. You might as well be intentional with it.
Thank you. And Blanche, your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have some specific examples. I think transitioning to full-time clinical work versus maybe 1 or 2 days a week was really, really challenging. It's notoriously known to be a really difficult year, regardless of how much you enjoy clinical work. It's just hard. And my thing with clients that I see is, I don't care if we get through the agenda, but I want to be present for you, right? I mean, I'm using clients as an example, but I would apply that to kind of anything really I do. And I had the privilege of working from home, obviously, because of the pandemic. And I'm like, yeah, I took bed breaks in between my clients, you know, and that was really restorative for me, you know, and no shame in that. Like, I really enjoyed jumping on my bed for 5 minutes and then getting up, right, and getting my materials together. So that's definitely one way, you know, I was able to keep it together. And something that I've always done, and again, I'm using therapy as an example, but if there's something, a component of your job as a student or whatever occupation you have, I have like a bit of a ritual where I have like one designated bag where all my materials for my therapy job is in there, and I put it in the closet, you know, and I've been doing that for years. After every, you know, that whenever I decide the work is done, it's definitely not always at the time you want, but at least when I'm ready to put it away until the next day, it's literally out of sight. And that's, you know, there's a lot of reasons why that works. It doesn't have to be you put it in the closet, but that's what works for me. And to be able to separate, because yeah, you do have to shift. You know, I think graduate students, especially, you have so many different roles and you have to like be able to shift within 10 minutes with your next meeting where you're doing something completely different. So that's really helped. But something that I really turned to throughout all the transitions and difficult times is really mindfulness, you know, and really focusing on what is it that I'm doing right now versus what is it that I'm worrying about, you know, and raising that awareness of I'm worrying about this thing that I don't have the answer to, I don't have time to address right now. It's done and it's over with, you know, whatever the reason is, but that's not what I'm doing right now. And that's hard. That's a mental exercise I have to do. I want to say some days every 5 minutes, you know, if I'm lucky, every 20 minutes, but it's something I really actively have to do. But before you can even integrate any type of coping mechanisms or de-stressing tactics, you have to have the awareness of when things aren't going the best. You know, you really have to learn yourself and study and observe yourself. What are my cues, right? Because when I'm in a crisis mode, or if I'm losing my mind, like I'm not gonna, you know, do my deep breathing or whatever it might be. So I always want to just say that to people, especially when you come to a panel like this or any type of seminar, like, it's okay if you don't have your 5 coping strategies that you use every day. Work on the awareness part first, because that's going to help you more so prevent rather than having to intervene on whatever emotional distress you're going through.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, I would like to ask briefly if you guys could tell us, I guess, what are some tips in terms of how to de-stress on a daily basis? I think it's quite clear that you all believe that mental health maintenance and hygiene, mental hygiene, are very important to being able to handle life challenges. And one big aspect of maintaining that is being able to de-stress. And so I guess what words would you give on that? And let's start with Allison.
I think we've sprinkled in all the different things that we do. I think for me, you know, the pandemic was like the ultimate in a while of separating home and work. And then COVID was like, nope. So, you know, I think creating some physical boundaries, Blanche, you said putting your bag away in the closet, I think is great. For me, you know, I'm lucky enough to have dedicated workspace in my apartment. And so just not doing, you know, I might take my laptop somewhere else, but like really not doing work there when I don't have to. I think using vacation and sick time, if you're privileged enough to have it, I think oftentimes we feel guilty doing that, or we don't make the time, but no one's going to take that time for you. And then I think also having like fun things that you do that have nothing to do with your identity, that have no goal. I think so often we're like, oh, well, this will help me get this or this. Like, nope, this is just a thing I do for myself. So, you know, I took a class at the Baltimore Jewelry Center because when I'm there, I have to be 100% focused on what I'm doing. Otherwise, I will hammer my finger off or, you know, bang something I shouldn't. So that type of activity, you know, really allows me to practice mindfulness, even if I don't always call it that, right? And so finding those things that you do for yourself outside of school that have nothing to do with it, just for that pure enjoyment.
Awesome. Saquon?
Okay, so for me, it's a lot about like perspective. Robert Fitzgerald Diggs, or RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, once said during a concert, he said, "If you're not having a good time, you're wasting your time." And I believe that's a big thing for perspective. It doesn't mean you always have to be doing something fun, but like find the beauty, find the joy in it, right? So I don't want you all to normalize, like, don't normalize being extremely stressed out and not like barely being able to function, but also take joy in it. Like right now, when like I can almost laugh at the trauma that I went through, right? And I don't know if that's just a defense mechanism that I have or if it actually is helpful, but that's something. And then what I always do is I have this thing called the cup theory. Don't steal it from me. But my cup theory is like we're all cups. We're all cups of water, right? And you can either be half empty or half full. That's your perspective. Is how you look at it. But anybody and anything that you interact with is going to pour into your cup or take away from your cup, right? So if you start with a clear cup of pure water, if you go into something that's not positive, like it could be filling in your cup, but it could be dirty water, and now your water is diluted. Or it could be you interact with somebody or somebody and something or somebody, and now your cup is more empty than it was before, and they're not reciprocating and pouring back into you in positive ways. So my thing is, at the end of like every day, I just try to think about like how things made me feel, right? Like, did I feel refreshed after this? When I got off the phone with my mother, like, did I feel drained or did I feel like rejuvenated? And so like just really, and then I'm like I said, I'm nerdy, so like I like take notes and like document like what makes me feel good throughout the day, because I've struggled like significantly with my mental health before. So I kind of just like I constantly like set reminders like it's okay, like things of that nature. So and then just to wrap up with that, um Trevor Noah in his like keynote, he was talking about how like there's really no difference between your work life and your personal life, and like how like you're still living when you're at work. So like just finding a space that you could be happy, that you can be joyful, that like that productively pours back into you. So if y'all want to, if you want my spreadsheet full of ideas that I do, email me and I will be sure to send it to all of you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Blanche?
Yeah, I mean, I echo, I think, what has been said already, especially, turning to folks that will just make you have fun, right? That actually didn't pursue this passive higher education. So, they don't want to even hear about that. That's really nice. I think just practically, like, yeah, I love TikTok, and I've been on TikTok since the pandemic started, and consistently it sparks joy. I learn things, I laugh, and I don't consider it doom scrolling, like if there's things that I don't want to see, you could just, put not interested or whatever. So I really like that. It also keeps me in tune with the youth that I need to work with sometimes. So, that's the professional angle to it. And lastly, I honestly think that having someone that will validate your experience, so a peer, someone that has the same goals as you, that's in the same career phase, that's amazing. And that's been an amazing support. I'm thinking about one person in particular. We have a similar background, we're in the same phase, and we'll text every day talking about this happened. Why are we doing this? And it's kind of a mixture of like humor, but also validating each other. And we could be real about it. We don't need to put on a facade that unfortunately we have to put on to a lot of other people. So I definitely encourage that. Venting, it's negative, but sometimes you need it.
It's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, in terms of TikTok, I wouldn't say my relationship with it is the healthiest, but it is definitely a good, spirit lifter. So, all right. Well, thank you guys all for your insight. I do want to open the floor to some questions, and we have a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask them. Right. Looks like we don't really have any questions at the moment. Again, thank you guys all so much for coming and taking the time to speak to us. Those are all very incredibly impactful pieces of information that I'm sure we'll all take home and incorporate into our daily lives. I'm assuming that people can also reach out to you all if they have other questions about this topic. All right, awesome. All right.
Can I just make a selfish pitch for a second? Do you mind?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that this conference was open to registrants from all over the world, but for those of you that are Hopkins students, I would really encourage you to look for the helpers, the student affairs professionals in your own divisions. And the Homewood campus, that might be myself, that may be someone in the academic dean's office, in the School of Medicine. Those are often called like student affairs people or student support people. But have those, I always say to students, you never think you're going to need me, but sometimes bad things happen to good people. And so that may be, you know, you have an unexpected financial issue that comes up, a death in the family, or you're really struggling through a transition. You know, that help is something that we should all engage in different ways across our time. So if you're at Hopkins, those people exist. If you're not at Hopkins, they likely exist at your institution, or even if you're working within like an EAP, employee assistance program. So don't be afraid to take advantage of those things, because like I said, you've prepaid for it, whether that's working as a research assistant, paying tuition, working as an employee. And so it's really important to know those people before you need them, because when we're struggling, we're often not great problem solvers. And so having those sort of names and numbers ready, or email addresses, websites, apps, whatever, can be really important to have on hand.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the conference. Thank you for joining us.